And it's a very good morning to Shadow Transport Minister Anthony Albanese, who joins us now live from Perth. Albo, good morning to you. First up, your reaction to the events of the last 24 hours.
Well, it's pretty extraordinary. 24 hours is certainly a long time in politics. I got on a plane on the East Coast and Tony Abbott was the Prime Minister, and when the plane landed, Malcolm Turnbull was the Prime Minister. So it's been a very eventful and turbulent 24 hours. I'm glad it was turbulent on the ground in Canberra rather than in the sky on the way to Perth.
You know, you're no stranger to this kind of thing. There's lots of blood on the floor and there's lots of people with blood on their hands.
Well, this will be an event that has fallout. That's what happens. And the fallout here of defeating a first-term elected Prime Minister in Tony Abbott will reverberate around the coalition party room and indeed the rank and file of the Liberal Party as well, I think, for some time to come. Having said that, I congratulate Malcolm Turnbull on his appointment to the Prime Ministership. It's an extraordinary honour, and the best thing about Malcolm, of course, I think is Lucy, and I certainly congratulate his wife, who's a friend of mine as well.
You'd be feeling a bit nervous, wouldn't you, Albo? I mean, it's long been said that there are plenty of Labor voters for whom, if Malcolm Turnbull did become leader of the LNP, they would vote for him.
Well, we'll wait and see how it plays out, of course, Lisa. There's no doubt that this will lead to a change in the political dynamic. But Malcolm Turnbull's been leader before, and I think had a range of failings were shown then, which caused him to lose the Liberal leadership from a position of strength, really. And so we'll wait and see whether he's learnt the lessons there. Certainly it's up to Malcolm Turnbull to deal with the contradictions that are there between his personal position on issues like climate change, on issues like marriage equality, on issues like public transport. I mean, here in Perth, he has an opportunity. The Canning by-election is just days away. Will Malcolm Turnbull immediately commit to put the $500 million that was cut from public transport here in Perth back into the budget? Now, Tony Abbott had this fixation against any public transport. Malcolm Turnbull doesn't have that same fixation, to his credit, but he's actually got to do something about it. He's got to not just ride on trains and buses, he's got to fund trains and buses.
He might end up being a better Labor leader than you lot.
Well, Carl, he's the leader of a team that has not changed. And the problem here, as I said, I think last Friday morning, chatting to Lisa on the show, is it's not just the leader, it's the whole team that's a problem. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull's performance as the broadband minister, replacing fibre with copper, doesn't give him any credit, nor does the $15 billion blowout in that program based upon their own costings. Right across the board, it's hard to see an area where this government has been successful. And the fact that they've changed leaders, we've had the second Lib spill in the space of a year, is quite extraordinary. The problem here is the whole team, and the government doesn't have a sense of purpose, hasn't had that from day one, didn't do any hard work from opposition to get the policies in place so that they would actually be a good government. And I think they've suffered in the polls and they've suffered in their internal dynamics because of that failure.
Well, the numbers have obviously been very good for Labor in recent months in particular. Truth is, you would prefer to be going to this election with Tony Abbott as the leader. Bill Shorten's really got to step up to the mark, being up against Malcolm Turnbull now.
Well, we don't get to select the leader of the other team. They've done that. But we've been successful against Malcolm Turnbull in the past, of course, and I believe we can be again. We have, I think, an added element now, which is the internal turmoil that inevitably will come from this. I think a range of Tony Abbott supporters really didn't see this coming, as in didn't think it would happen. They thought that he'd got through that first challenge against the empty chair earlier in the year, and they thought that they'd consolidated. And quite clearly, given the confidence that Tony Abbott had in the numbers, there are a range of people who've promised their vote more than once. So there were 100 in the party room, but it appears that there were 150 votes when it got tallied up between Malcolm Turnbull and Tony Abbott.
Albo, let's level with each other. You've always been very frank with us on your favoured breakfast program. At the end of the day, you would have much preferred Tony Abbott taking the Liberal Party to the next election, Malcolm Turnbull leading it. Well, it must have led to all kinds of swear words behind the scenes last night, surely.
I don't know, I was on a plane to Perth, Carl, so I missed the action. There weren't any swear words at Perth Airport. I've got to say, though, the big winners last night were the telephone companies, because no doubt what occurred when the plane landed in Perth and they did that magic, you can now turn off flight mode. There was a ringing beep around the plane as the news went through.
On a serious note, though, and just finally, the Australian public, the electorate, felt let down when you did it twice. They feel, I think, aggrieved now that it's happened again. When are politicians in Canberra going to have respect for the electorate?
Well, I think this is an issue. I think that unseating a first-term elected Prime Minister is a very big call indeed, which is why, look, there's no doubt when you say, to be frank with you, as I was asked to be, there's no doubt that Tony Abbott, I think, was very unpopular in the electorate and was really struggling to connect. There were a range of issues where, you know, I used to have a line, I'll have to think of new ones, you know, now with Malcolm Turnbull, but Tony Abbott was stuck in the past and he did want Australia to be held back there, and I think that caused real frustration in the electorate that he wasn't someone for 2015. He was someone more pre the 1960s era in terms of his social policy and his attitude towards social change. And there's no doubt Malcolm Turnbull is a much more modern person. But that advantage, I think, we'll need to see how it plays out, because there's also a big disadvantage, because there's no doubt that the Australian public will feel, particularly some of the Liberal Party faithful, will feel that the wrong thing was done last night, that they worked for an Abbott government, and now they've got something very different from that.
All right, Anthony Albanese coming to us live from Perth. You dropping into Canning today, Albo?
I've got a breakfast on this morning at the Swan Valley, tourism breakfast hosted by the City of Swan. And then I will be catching up, funnily enough, with Matt Keogh, our candidate for Canning, talking about public transport and the need to fund it, and also infrastructure in Canning. Can I say this about Tony Abbott, if I can just say on one thing, to his credit? Something I admire about Tony Abbott is his loyalty. I think it cost him the fact that he was loyal to Bronwyn Bishop beyond when it was sensible in terms of her speakership and others. But I think I have respect for him as a person, even though I have very strong ideological differences with him and political differences with him. But today he'll be doing it tough, and I think as a human being, I think he deserves a bit of space, because it'll be difficult for him and Margie and the family to deal with what's occurred
Indeed.
last night, and I certainly wish him, on a personal level, all the best.
That's very well said, Albo, and I think a lot of people would join you in those sentiments. Thanks very much for your time. We'll see you soon. We'll certainly see you on Friday.
See you Friday morning with bells on.
And
We can chat, see what role
just remember,
Christopher
loyalty
played.
is a horrible attribute as a politician. It's going to kill you.
Doesn't seem to do
See you soon, Albo.
many
Thank you, buddy.
favours.